Pathfinder 2e is full of unique actions you can take in combat, from things like striking and moving to things like demoralizing and shoving. There's a ton of options, and that is great thanks to the 3-action economy of the system. For the most part, these actions are all pretty well balanced. Some might be a little stronger than others, but there is one action within the system that greatly stands out against the others. This is an action that is so bad that in my 2 years of playing this game, I have never once seen a player take it. But before we talk about this action, I would like to remind you that Sinclair's Library, the Kickstarter, is going live in March. So do us a favor, click that link at the top of the description, head over to the landing page, and sign up for our mailing list. Remember that anybody who signs up for the mailing list and pledges to the Kickstarter within the first 48 hours gets a free Bandit dice set. You don't want to miss out on that. The Codex and the Almanac are going to be some amazing books for the 2E system. So pledge to the Kickstarter when it launches in March, and don't miss out. Aren't you proud of me? I kept my own sponsored segment less than 45 seconds this time. So what is this horrible, worst action in the entire Pathfinder 2e system? Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to Disarm. Now in a vacuum, you'd think Disarm might be pretty good. You know, knocking the weapon out of an opponent's hand, severely limiting their options in combat, that's fantastic. But let's take a look at the action itself and see why it's so awful. Disarm as an action is pretty simple. For one action, you roll an athletics check against the target's reflex DC, and on a critical success, you knock the weapon out of their hand onto the space they're currently in. Now, that's on a critical success. On a critical success, you disarm the target with Disarm. So what happens on a normal success? Well, if you successfully use Disarm, you do not disarm them. You instead loosen their grip on the weapon. This means they take a -2 to attack rolls with that weapon, and all future attempts to disarm that weapon from that target take a +2 circumstance bonus. Pretty cool, right? Let's talk about why it's not. First off, the bonus to future disarm checks only lasts until the beginning of that character's next turn. So let's say you go right before them in initiative. Congratulations, the success is pretty much useless. Sure, you can think of it as, oh, I can just try to disarm again and I'll get a +2 bonus, right? Yes, but you'll still be at a net -3. This is because Disarm has the attack trait, and every time you take an action with the attack trait, all future attack actions are at -5, and then -10 if you try it a third time. Additionally, this +2 bonus is not cumulative. It is a +2 circumstance bonus, and circumstance bonuses don't stack, you just take the highest one. So even if you normal succeed your disarm check twice, that does not become a +4, it's still just a +2. Same goes for the penalty, you can't rack up that penalty either. And let's read this very carefully. Until the start of that creature's turn, the target takes a -2 circumstance penalty to attacks with the item. This means if you successfully disarm them, and then it's their turn, they're not taking any penalties to attack rolls. This penalty will only affect attacks that happen outside of their turn, like attacks of opportunity. If attacks of opportunity were as common in Pathfinder as they were in D&D 5e, this would be a little bit better, but most creatures don't have attack of opportunity in Pathfinder 2e. So what does this mean? Well, it means on a normal success, you need to hope you have an ally who can also attempt to disarm on their turn to utilize that +2 circumstance bonus to its fullest and hopefully get a critical success to actually knock the weapon out of the target's hand.
Why are you the way that you are?
This is just awful. On top of everything, if you happen to crit fail by rolling a 1 or a 2, you become flat-footed until the start of your next turn. That's just a straight -2 to armor class for an entire round because you failed to disarm. That is a horrible risk for a really terrible potential reward. So why is Disarm so bad? It's not like it's a balance thing. We can compare it to its brothers and sisters of Shove and Trip, and we can see those are so much better. Shove on a normal success allows you to push a target 5 feet, and if you want to, you can follow them. This is really useful for battlefield manipulation and keeping things off of your squishy targets, like pushing someone 5 feet away from the wizard and shoving yourself in between them. Really cool. And Trip is the biggest example. Trip is also an athletics check against the target's reflex DC. On a normal success, they're tripped. They fall prone. That means they're flat-footed and they need to take a move action to stand up, which is huge. So why is a normal success on Disarm nothing? Trip even does damage on a critical success, whereas Disarm just functions on a critical success. There might have been a fear at Paizo that think that if player characters got disarmed, it could potentially be unfun, and maybe that's why they made it a critical success, to stop monsters from critically disarming them. Also, maybe they couldn't think of a critical success for Disarm, but how about this? On a success, they're disarmed and it lands in their space. On a critical success, they're disarmed and it slides 10 feet in any direction. How about that? I don't understand why this is the way it is. It's not like it would be overpowered. Sure, the players could start disarming opponents, but guess what? The opponents can start disarming players. This would be an amazing way to counter something like a plate armor, low dex, high strength character. A plate mail champion is going to be very easy to disarm, whereas something like a rogue or a dex-based fighter wouldn't. On top of that, it would add really interesting threats to encounters that have natural weapon-toting enemies. Something like a wolf or even a lycanthrope could disarm an opponent, a player character. If a wolf disarms you, you can't disarm it back, and if you want to pick it up, you might suffer an attack of opportunity. It's a lot of really cool things that it felt like Paizo was too scared to implement. So how do we fix disarm? Because I'm not kidding. I have never even seen someone attempt a disarm check. I've attempted one as a monster like one time to see what would happen. I think I got a crit success, so it worked, but it was like a 19 on the die. That's not good enough. Luckily for you, I have 3 homebrew options for you if you would like to try adjusting the disarm action. Number 1, remove the attack trait. I know this might make it a little bit too strong maybe, but I like removing the attack trait from Disarm. Because something bad only happens on a critical success, even a low-level character with expert proficiency will probably need to roll a 15 or higher to disarm them. This also means you can attack someone once or twice and then disarm without really feeling like you're wasting an action. Because if you're trying to disarm at -10, you might as well not even be doing anything. The second option is to have the success effects last until the start of your next turn. Give them that -2 penalty to attack rolls for their turn. Don't have it go away at the start of their turn. What's the point of that? You could almost think of that as like a defensive flat-footed. Rather than giving them -2 to armor class with flat-footed, you'd instead give them -2 to attack rolls with disarm, which is something you can usually only do through magic or maybe intimidation. This would be a cool new way to give them a penalty to attack rolls that something like a fighter or a rogue can do. The third option is exactly what I said earlier in the video. On a success, they drop the weapon in their space. On a critical success, it is knocked 10 feet away in the player's direction of choice. I think that would be really fine, and it doesn't sound that overpowered because anything you give the players with a standard action also works for enemies. So even if Disarm became a very viable and scary option, it would be just as scary for the players when they end up facing an opponent who's proficient in athletics. But what do you think? Do you think Disarm is fine? Do you think it really needs a tune-up? I mean, when you Google Disarm Pathfinder 2e, aside from Archives of Nethys, the first thing that pops up is a Reddit post saying, "Is Disarm ever worth it?" Talk to me in the comments, let me know how you would change it, let me know if you've had any experiences with Disarm, and let me know what you think of the action as a whole, especially in comparison to things like Trip and Shove, which are far more effective and get far more feat support. That's something I didn't even touch on. Disarm has almost no feat support, even from classes that could benefit from it, like Swashbuckler. But that's it for me. I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons. If you want to get some playtest material for Sinclair's library early, join the Patreon for as little as $10 a month. We already have access to the first 2 cursed archetypes, so if you want to get access to those, use them at your table and playtest for them and leave us feedback. They're available instantly right when you pledge $10 or more. And don't forget to click the link in the description to be taken to the landing page to join our mailing list. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no Nat 1.